Welcome to our lovely future humans, to our 5D collective, to all those who are moving into our seventh dimension. That's where we're at. Yeah, if you're new, you're like, what the heck? So you own your nervous system. Let me just start from that, which is why you own the heart, and then that's why you own the mind. And so you're a master of yourself, and that's why you commit, as leaders do. And this is part of our lovely new playlist, Unlocking Human Potential, or Unlocking Higher Human Potential. I forget the exact title, but before we continue with the conversation, as this 5D mystic wants to share with you habits and lifestyle choices, but also personal growth, spiritual growth. And after this, we'll have some stories and messages for you all. The empowered self-leadership, the embodied self-leadership playlist. That way you can understand what a leader is in the terms of IHP content and who I am and what I'm bringing forth. But also because the content that I create and the practices and the guides on PayHip and the Substack community are for people who are committed to being themselves. And so you're not a leader if you're not your authentic self. I remain myself under pressure because I'm not a person who ignores when I get activated, when I have effective realism, because I don't ignore myself. But I also am myself because my emotions aren't my sovereign rulers. I'm my sovereign ruler, and I also don't even need to use the word, but I like to use different words. So performance, for example, can be used good, can be used bad. And noticing when we have charges with words. And so sometimes you might want to change some words up. Why? Because emotions are attached to it. But are the emotions objective? No. Do they count? Well, they're meaningful. So you have fun with yourself. Okay, so you're playful with life because you're playful with the mastery of intensity. So playful mastery of intensity, that's our 5th episode. And so you're having fun because, as lovers do, we get to speak from a voice that knows what it was like to be an ugly duckling to what it's like to become the swan. And with this lovely daisy, we can make use of our solar plexus, our willpower, our sacral, our sensuality, and complete expression of all. And here's where our lovely third eye and crown, this is how I'm bringing it to you, Maria, the 5D mystic here. So have fun with it. There's symbolism. You don't have to read too much into it, but I love that I get the best of all worlds. So scientists are amazing, and as they explain, our dream state is very important. Now, for some of us, it's not only the dream state, but for those who do understand, we are still an embodied brain. And so when people have nightmare after nightmare after nightmare, there's a lovely Patrick McNamara, neuroscientist, who says you don't have to suffer. And I agree, because when you get the brain integrated with a good therapist, then you stop having nightmares. And then you'll be able to consistently self-regulate and differentiate. So autonomous self-regulation, that's what leaders are made of, the love-based leaders. Our fear-based leaders continue to hang around the ones who want the charged narratives and who are not supporting themselves to become the embodiment of leadership. So embodied self-leadership, emotion activation without identity distortion, episode 1 of the playlist. Nervous system steadiness during uncertainty, episode 2. Relational integrity under pressure. This one's a fun one. And for 1 and 3, we had an extra episode. And then I believe I put another one in there for another reason, but I need to check the playlist again. 4, capacity to feel deeply without collapsing or performing. Okay, so when you are in a eustress performance, because you'll see those words in some of the PDFs, some are free, some are the paid ones, that's because you are using the neuroscientists talk about metastability and how the flow state pushes our brain to the edge of criticality. Okay, so you're committed to your mind because you're committed to your heart, and you're committed to being a true leader, meaning a person who says all of God's children and or all of human beings, 8 billion and growing, have the same embodied brain I do. And if they own it, then we're going to meet who they are. And like we have a 3-year-old and an ego, they will too. And then because though we're all integrated and having a good time, subjective reality, whether it be with our 3D 4D collective who believe in things that we don't, we're not going to be fighting and argumentation. We're not going to argue with people about their subjective stuff. Freedom does not mean I can do whatever I want with you. Freedom means I can be whichever way I want within myself. Thank you, Sadhguru. And so that's what a leader is committed to, is I'm going to be myself and you're going to be you. And we won't repeat those core wounds rejection, abandonment, humiliation, shame, now betrayal, and injustice. Okay, so when people will decide to stay in a charged state over injustice, this is where we will see those people. We, on the other hand, choose to work with the charge because we can. And so we know that justice will be something that arrives on planet Earth because we know our species. Our faith in humanity has not been broken. Mystic, spiritual, or mindful, that's our 5D collective. And so on a day where we're upset, we know how to process the charge, to forgive, because we are capable of perceiving very deep feelings, playful mastery of intensity. Okay, so when people are in minimum energy mode, when they're still collapsing and performing in a way of defense mechanisms, they don't know how to be their own lover because they don't know how to be in their frequency of love, which means in the oxytocin gene hormone, which means they haven't done the ventral pivot yet. And so if they're not able to sit in the wellness, inner peace, inner steadiness, in that which is personal growth and spiritual growth, which is not a trend, they're not yet ready for the content, IHP, or on PayHip, because they're not yet their own sovereign blueprint. They're not yet their regulated leader. They're not even a leader because they're not themselves. And as those who follow the fear-based leaders around, we all know what they're doing. They're doing the sympathetic, I'm going to stay in my defense energy mode, and that's a sad story because they're suffering life. And their unsteady self-image has them following each other around with a no-sensitive chip, and grandiosity is their cup of tea, and they use charged narratives and stories. So we have a whole group of people who are, to this day, calling us demons. We're the bad ones. They're all the chosen ones. And as I was sharing in some of our episodes, the day the sun is about to do what it will do, thanks Neil deGrasse for holding down the fort of reality, they will be asked with all due respect, we come from the same planet you've been living on, but as we did respect your beliefs, do you by any chance want to let your children, the ones you say you love deeply, come with us so that they don't have to die an excruciating, painful death, because that will happen? Any chance that you might let us take your children who you love deeply with us? No? So epistemic trust, right there. There's your broken epistemic trust. There's people who will say our religious belief is the truth, and we'll say, as mystic spiritual ones, we understand what society, the scientific society, has decided to respect those beliefs and to organize it with the laws in such a way that we will learn how to coexist with you. But this mystic spiritual one will not think I'm a demon. No, I will think nothing except for you're made in flesh and you're using ancient stories and books and you're actually saying the word love. There is no love here. There is Alice in Wonderland and the rabbit hole that they're going down, and that's why left becomes delusional idiot with a right that is a judgmental asshole, and with a bunch of people who, as long as they're going to put people that are like this on pedestals, no one's going to be like, wow, that's real leadership. It's going to be, okay, we have insecure human beings whose epistemic trust was broken, and as lovely Terrio points out, they are mannered. The grandiosity, they were mannered, they're continuing it. And so attachment trauma education helps any person who's a leader committed to leading. Okay, we have the minimum energy mode collective is what I can also call them, the 3D, 4D. They suffer, they have an unsteady self, their injustice, their betrayal, their humiliation, their abandonment, and their rejection. All their core wounds are bringing them together. They're in an adaptive child part and in an adaptive childhood patterns, and their maladaptive patterns they justify. They're not inner strong or courageous anymore. Now they're becoming, simply put, Peter Pan with the Lost Boys following Wendy's around, and we don't actually have confusion. So we're not going to need to engage with people that are fear-based, leadership-led in any way except for one, we will respect, as grounded in reality people do. Thank you, Sam Harris, that cherishable beliefs of all of us can be falsifiable, and then that science is not a belief, it's actually data. And so we will be able to have fun because relational integrity is a priority and relational joy is included in it. And those who think that it is because of people who respect differences of ways of thinking and believing that we have flat earthers, it's because of insecure human beings who have not taken their selves to a therapist so that they could get to become authentically themselves and become the real them. Okay, so when people don't understand that the freedom to be you is that which calls for the nervous system to be self-regulating. It's a number of people who either are ignorant of the information or they don't believe in it, which I have had people say, I found it hard to believe that my first year's life. So as long as people are disregarding that which brings forth the way they feel about life, the suffering stuff, you're gonna have to pause yourself, or I've learned how to. So we almost reacted, and then we reminded ourselves that sovereignty is a choice. Then number 2, reality is socially defined in addition to subjectively lived. Okay, and so the definitions are always embodied. That is, concrete individuals and groups of individuals serve as definers of reality. That's a quote from a book that I have on sociology. And so we have socially defined reality, we have our subjective reality, and then we have our objective reality, which is basically a Neil deGrasse. He's a green source, and anyone else who knows that the star, our sun, is real and that planet Earth is real, and that doesn't make mystic spiritual any of our downloads or messages fake. No, this is the part of where, let me pause to, it makes it so that for the mystic spiritual community, we are understanding why there are changes as we move into the future. And that's with the old stories becoming not obsolete, but with the understanding of our left, they existed for the times that they were made for. And that means they had lack of information of the embodied brain, the nervous system. Now that we all are aware of brain science, at least I am, and the ones who are aware of what humans are made of, it's okay. So also scientists are looking into the sphere of consciousness. They call it intelligence, whatever they call it. We still call it Akash, source, God. We call it all of it. The ways to God, after all, is the heart. So we're all on the same team. That's the 5D collective and moving forward. And that's humanity, because we evolve as a species. As for the ones who will not want to evolve with us, that's okay, because the ones who move into the present with equanimity, leaders, understand dysregulation and modulation. And so with relational integrity in the forefront, leaders will always lead, followers will always follow. No, leaders will make leaders out of followers. Those who maintain followership, quote unquote, are Peter Pan with the Lost Boys, who will look at people like myself and whoever else is a true leader and say that we are either demonic, evil, the wrong side, disillusioned, whatever it is. They will continue using what those who are enraged and dysregulated do best. That which is a story with ancient books and with, above all, activated states. So distortions come with effective realism. Groupies come with core wounds that are unhealed, with the enraged injustice of a very, very unhealthy self-righteous baton, because at that point, they're a bunch of people who are doing themselves a disservice. So while they could completely continue doing what they do with their ventral vagal state, they don't. And so when they're casting stones and they're giving scarlet letters out, they are actually, it's actually accentuated and made more, and then you have distortion. So we don't need to tend to any of this. I'm just presenting. The true leadership kind is one that is able to understand, and then the fake leadership kind is the one that those who like those mannerisms, they were modeled it, so they just consistently feel they have to fight for what is right, and that fight is something that you can't talk sense. And so I'm gonna again pause. We're gonna have some stories and channel guidance and food for thought. Mastery comes when you master your heart, because that's the moment of truth where you do understand how to process something that's really upsetting, like an injustice. You're not collapsing, and you're not performing in a way of a Peter Pan who's still looking to be able to be whatever he wants to be. And so here's where our lovely fight response really indicates a 3-year-old with a 16-year-old that wants to be seen and then wants to be soothed, safe, secure. But at the same time, if you're still fighting for it and you're still protecting from it, you're not really yet allowing those defenses to fall and for you to be vulnerable. And so you haven't yet achieved the complete, consistent freedom that lovely Sadhguru is talking about, in the absence of the attachment trauma education that I'm adding, because I bring the human elements to the spiritual and spirituality elements. And for our 5D collective of mystic spiritual and mindful ones, we're embodied self-leadership. So the playful mastery of intensity, you get playful in life, because being playful does not mean not taking life seriously. It means you do not take yourself too seriously. Thank you, Sadhguru. And so here's why, when you do understand, where does rigidity come up and what does it do when it comes up? It will have you deny that something exists. Typically, it's going to be something that you don't like to see out there in the world. And so if it's not rigidity, it could be irritation, which is where, if you're true leadership material, you're not going to want to be blinded by your own effective realism and your own charges. And I said want, because this is the part of where free will comes into the mix. And this is the part where everyone that I have noticed, so if people follow around those who are fear-based leaders, it's because they're not wanting to do the work. It means they're not going to claim the inner ease of being right or wrong. A leader can be right and wrong. Inner ease with it means that you know this 50-50. You have no fear of it. And here's the expert yogis who are mastered in the darkness that I've heard Sadhguru describe, and I'm going to bring it to you humanly. It's called, I have human secondary consciousness. It's called that I have a brain that's an anticipation machine, and I have a mind that is a pattern recognizer. It's also called that my default mode network has a pattern recognition of myself and of every other person out there that I've had a relationship and an interaction with. Then it's also going to be a pattern recognition of someone that can take the stories of the ancestors and all this, and then sit in the unknown without fear or some siren coming to get me and know, wow, let me think. Complex systems. What was it? There's a nice quote. They don't have formulas. But I'm not an insecure person, so I don't need a false sense of safety when this equation comes up. I don't struggle with life's purpose. I don't struggle with science and spirituality. I don't struggle with not knowing tomorrow. What I understand is that a complex system, my mind comprehends it. And then that I understand that we have an array of opportunity in front of us. And I'm not afraid of any of those options, because there's no monster that's going to come eat me alive at any point right now. Being grounded in reality with information as a spiritual one is this. And then being in this Planck zero that you've heard probably a bunch of people talk about, it means that you're able to sit with the knowledge of, we're not needing to save the planet because there's some urgent mission we're on. When people are still living out that which is something of an urgency and of a fight, but there is no sky falling, Chicken Little. I'm bringing to you something called, that's the ease that anyone, spiritual, mystic, or mindful, will be engaging in. When I watch the lovely podcast hosts of a number of different channels, the spiritual ones particularly, I'm thankful because they enlighten me with all of their knowledge. But what I've noticed is that the people who go to these channels want to know how things are moving along, and the stories that get given to them, or the energy I should say, not the stories, are actively something that I find, let me pause. When you're not comfortable with the unknown of tomorrow, that to me just states you're not a leader yet. You're not committed to yourself. You don't own your default mode network, because if you did, you wouldn't be looking outside of yourself for guidance with fear. You'd be aware of healthy fear, knowing that you would love to know how tomorrow's going to go. But then if you're grounded in reality as mystic, spiritual, and mindful, you'll say, well, there's dark matter and dark energy. So technically, as long as the tangible scientists like Neil deGrasse continue doing what they do best, we're going to be okay, because they'll figure out. And there's plenty of smart scientists, engineers, mathematicians, I know it, that know it's a real earth, it's not a virtual reality, and so they continue to invest and work on everything that they can do to make sure that we get what we need with this heat, with the environment, okay, like tangible things I'm talking right now. And so for me, being spiritual mystic brings spiritual personal growth for those who are leadership material, because it is true, being able to commit to your own heart and your own mind will bring the ventral vagal state to all of those others. The energy, excuse me, not the state. But that energy will give the support and the comfort that those who are in fight response need to rest. The sad part is that without them committing to their own personal growth and spiritual growth, because they haven't even bothered committing to becoming their authentic self, because they haven't let go of this hypervigilance mode, and they are not believing the ones who are talking to them about it, or they're not doing the work, okay? The ones who are doing the work, but they don't want to accept that there's going to always be differences of political truths, realities, okay, societal truths, meaning different belief systems, different ways of doing things. So when you're not able to comprehend from a open heart that we have different ways that we arrive at actual thinking in addition to different ways of feeling, you don't hold the leadership position because you're incapable of being able to provide that which is needed to lead. Now, the ones who are cool with the grandiosity manners, dysregulation, minimum energy mode, they're not really cool with it. The people who will accept that and look at it and put it on a pedestal really are the ones who don't yet know how to be in their own restorative embodiment. And so it's not something that you're going to say, let me copy that. That's all fear-based. So they validate the charges, they validate the narratives, they validate the distortion, they validate that the ones who are twisting words would be us and that they know the truth, and then they're having fun with it. The ones who are all upset, every child, every 8 billion person matters. All of God's children matter, meaning none of us are more special than others. So when someone wants to say it's thanks to one group that we make it into the future, it's thanks to another group, this is once again an ego and a Peter Pan with the Lost Boys who on their Neverland go on adventures, and it's thanks to them that everything keeps going fine. And there's your nervous system that is so used to the dopamine stuff. They don't, even if they did a detox, which by the way, you don't detox, the point of your habits is this: you can bring the ventral vagal state, and if you choose it, that's because you're wielding your own brain from alert to this, and you know your window tolerance, and that's the part of where it doesn't have to be neuroatypical, neurotypical. The neurodivergent and neuro all community knows when they're taking care of being their authentic self, their own window tolerance, and then because they want to be around others, so relational integrity and joy, that's the relational self, that's the mui that Dr. Daniel Siegel talks about. So you want to hang around with different people. You're not offended or upset or like, oh my God, I'm intimidated. Your temperament and your personality patterns, you own all that. So you don't get highly sensitive or highly intense because you know how your window of tolerance works, you know how your window welcome works, because you also know how the world works, and subjective reality is a part of it. And when people think injustice is here because God doesn't exist, they're very upset. And they have very, very upset with human beings. Like as Zen Master says, we have laundry when we cry. And so he doesn't think enlightenment is possible. Enlightenment is possible. He's not in the soul age group, that's obvious. But he's also, simply put, a person who doesn't understand when you're crying and you're judging humanity. You're playing like you are a know-it-all in a way of being a God or it. And none of us are it. Actually, the one thing that God always chimes in, hey Maria, don't play the know-it-all. Remember, your brothers and sisters have free will. And remember what knowledge is. It empowers, but only when people want to be empowered, to be themselves. When they're afraid because they are a 16-year-old with a 3-year-old who's behind a couch because they didn't get tended to, and their first year of life was shit, and their second and third in the womb and all that, and they got a 16-year-old who's still using the mannerisms that they protected themselves with for those first 16-year life, I ain't gonna call it a demon because it ain't it. That's a poor human being who all I want to do is say, can I hug you? It won't stick too long, the ventral vagal stuff, the gooey. I'll just hug you a little bit. Then I'll let you go and you can continue being Gargamel with, you know, all the other whatever you're doing out there with the 3D, 4D land. So it's not funny. For me, it's sad. There's a bunch of people who could be today in their best self because they would be in inner ease, which is where the authentic self comes into the mix. And so Manny, Diego, and Sid are authentically who they are. They have different personality traits. They have different temperament. And when we bring the best out of each other, that is what human beings do best. And that's what leaders do. Fear-based leaders don't care to bring out the best of each other. Think of Diego's family from Ice Age. They make fun of each other. There's your maladaptive patterns of behavior. Those are all people who need therapy. And it's not I look at them as gossipers and people that I need to be pointing a finger at. They can keep playing petty. The 3D, 4D, they're not petty in a sense of, oh my God, let me judge your mannerisms as good or bad. No, I now actively am aware you're playing out an insecure pattern from your own childhood. And just because our ancestors were ignorant of things You think that drama is the way to be and that we don't know what feelings are. No, we know what feelings are and what commitment is. Death departs, sickness and health, for better, for poorer, for richer, for worse. Yeah, anyone. So when I see people who think that these words mean something only in specific places where, by the way, I get to be rejected today, I'll respect that rejection, but not because it's protection, because I have common sense. And you know what? My heart is sad because I say I had a good Christian Catholic catechist upbringing and now I'm rejected because I have cards and I'm a mystic. Yeah, you know what? I don't want to be welcomed or accepted by those who are so close-minded and so disconnected from God because they think that the books are accurate according to yesterday's news versus hello, get down from whatever you're I don't even this is the moment of truth. My rational brain is like, I didn't realize how many people thought God would have wanted us to stay stupid. So at that point, why don't you join the other people who don't like us because we have technology and science, because that's where you should be. You should be with them in the middle of nowhere and telling everyone of us how bad we all are. Because that way, one day when the sun does go out, though, you're all hanging out being the chosen ones. And obviously, it's ridiculous. What I have to say is it's ridiculous. I'm not at loss for words. I'm actively a spiritual mystic who's like, what the fuck? Seriously, you got to be kidding me. Like, you're completely delusional. That's all. That's really, and here it's not even a pet peeve. It's more of I am sharing right now as a human being who is spiritual, mystic, and rational. I'm like, how do you make sense of it? Oh, I got explained it in my face. Sorry, you rejected Maria. I remember though when I saw demonic possession and how people looked at me. I was not about to let me tell you what I'm thinking, because that would have been the moment of truth where you're just going to insult a person for no other reason except for you're going to say something like, you did go to the hospital, right? You get, surgery, whatever it is. You did use science. So, like the inconsistency. Commitment can only be achieved if you're committed to consistency, and you can only be consistent in the way of a human if you're able to hear yourself, might I add. So when someone's buying into their own bullshit, this is how it's easy to see the performer who's a circus act. That's your insecure person who has a fight going on, and it's not with me. It's basically something that has nothing to do with me, but they definitely don't notice it themselves because, again, then they go on to say, well, the Adam and Eve story really blah, blah. So they buy into what has been told to them. I don't have an issue with the follower. I'm thinking, okay, fear-based leaders, I see that you're committing to your stuff, but I'm not committed to putting you in any kind of position of you are the way to God, because you're not. You are no longer the way to anything except for to an old story and ignorance, and I'm not going to praise it. I'm not going to make it into my mission to make it look like shit either, which is when I see people shitting on all of the institutions and stuff. No, because I understand what they served. And I understand to this day what our systems and society serves. And that's why a rational person will understand how systems work. A rebellious asshole teenager, quote unquote, because that's what I think when I think of people who are delusional. They're asshole teenagers. And that's my teenager speaking up right now. So when you see people who are, as Neil deGrasse points out, the less connected you are to what is objectively true, the less likely you are able to make decisions that will benefit your life, the life of your family, even civilization itself. I have nothing to say except for anyone who still finds the injustices of the world enraging. I get it, but you haven't moved to the next pivot, so you don't know how to be a leader. Now you just know how to be one of the random other voices who, by the way, will fall for some kind of bullshit commercial that gives you an object and makes it seem like you can close all those noisy intervening voices out, and instead of educating you to say, here's what good professionals look like, here's what those voices and all that inconsistent, yes, so not moving into their authentic self yet. They can if they want. They can consistently choose a path that will bring them to welcome who they are, know how to use their nervous system, and as they keep moving forward in that journey, we will be there to support them every step of the way, because as one of the amazing therapists I learned from explains, when someone's getting out of the self-loathing, gut-wrench, torn apart hellhole that their body is and their embodied brain is, we're going to help them get up. They're going to fall back down. We're going to help them get up again. They're going to keep climbing, and every single ladder, as they put that hand, it's walking out of hell. Okay, burn your hands, burn all. And this was a visual that this person who's a therapist gave me, and I'm going to bring in also Dr. Daniel Fox as he presents, maladaptive patterns. We all will be able to fall back on them. The drinking or the drugging or whatever it is that gave people a way to actually withstand things that were completely horrible. Okay, so when you hear how that happens and then you say, oh, they can fall back, but you don't shame. No characterological distinction. It's, I get it. Here, I'll lift you back up again. You don't shame people, you support people. And as relational integrity, joy, and the priority with sensitive, emotionally aware people, not intense in a way of let me project shit on you or impose it, that's how you help someone get out. And so while others will continue to think it ain't no rainbows and sunshines, life gonna hit you hard, and it's going to be about how you can not hit back, but how many times when you get hit and then keep moving forward. Thanks, Sylvester Stallone, which that was the quote I was going to bring into yesterday's episode. So no, life is rainbows and sunshines when you get hit. Of course, it's not about how hard you can hit, but it's about how hard you can, whatever, it's all of it, Sylvester. So how about rising from the ashes, not falling back down? And that is the power of the ventral. The power of the ventral is a consistent abundance energy mode. When someone doesn't know how to do it, you just think, well, you could do it. Choo Choo Train did it. So did the, amazing journey of a bunch of people. Okay, so we lift people up. They're choosing to stay up. If they want to go up and down a merry-go-round, they won't be choosing love. They will be choosing to second their maladaptive patterns. And at that point, they will disengage from that which is a consistent, contingent communicating relationship. So secure connections. People who are not into inner peace, inner stability, wellness, love, leadership, commitment. They don't enjoy stability because neutrality is dangerous, because being able to poke is what they want to do. No, it's what they're used to doing. And when you're not playing the game that they are playing because they don't understand that they're living out something called their distress, it becomes uninteresting because they are uninterested by stability. Inner steadiness, inner peace, wellness. It's not boring to be a securely attached, healthy self-worth person. What is boring is to find 4D, 3D continuing with stories of ancient news and people who want to look at me and say I'm rejected and that their demonic possession experience that they saw was real. It's not what you saw was fake. It's we have explanations now. And as Hippocrates told his way back when colleagues, when we find out what epilepsy is, we will stop calling it the wrath of the gods. Well, we know what decentralizing and the self and religious experiences are. Thank you, Patrick McNamara. And we know how the embodied brain works. And there's no evil inside of anyone. And when someone wants to use the word and put it next to psychopathy, they obviously haven't understood how the brain chemistry and science works. Otherwise, they disengage completely from the word. And when someone wants to say lack of imagination for evil, they lack the education, and they're continuing to play to a crowd who wants the word and wants to, in fact, continue to label those who are in that group of evil, Michael Stone Forensic Criminologist scale, as objects. And I'm saying they're not objects, they're human beings who are made of flesh and who have an embodied brain and who have an explanation for why they do what they do. You don't have to like it. Chicken Little, the sky isn't falling. You don't have to like an explanation. You don't have to dislike it. You don't have to be emotionally charged about it. You can be completely with your heart open and your mind thinking and feeling and acknowledging what an explanation is that is objectively true because we're all an embodied brain. And there's your reality. While I may be a mystic and spiritual, that's called not a belief. Reality, embodied brain, authentic self, people who know how to live life and commit to it, people who don't. Those who don't aren't demons because none of them are scary monsters. They're all poor, unfortunate souls. So sad, but true. That one wanting to be pretty, that one wanting to get the girl. And do I help them? No, I don't because I ain't Ursula. Hey, Ariel, why'd you give up your voice? Hey, Eric. So any kind of story where I'm seeing people hiding away, I'm like, okay, now I know exactly what I'm dealing with. It's called the artists who are expressing that which is their unhealed journey. Amazing. Well, kinda, not really. I'm here for the ones who are going to say, okay, look, here's how I'm going to encourage comfort, strength, and support. Not all of the people got to begin life with an authentic self. The ones who do the aerial thing, eventually you hope, instead of going to Ursula, they go to a good therapist. With the good therapist, they don't even need Ursula. As for Ursula and the seaweed, it's all the people who follow around people who say, with my one little finger, I'm going to dismantle modern-day therapists. And that's the Ursula of the group. And you think nothing because the minute that you see all of these women gathering around and laughing with the human being of the same bullshit, same thing goes for men who are morons. That's how I will tell you I spot them. It's not funny. But then again, Schopenhauer in his quote, if you want to appeal to a large audience, well, the masses of the 3D, 4D are going to continue hanging around each other. And so they suffer life and they have an unsteady self-image. And like all of those who want, what is it? Insecure people prefer a false sense of safety when it comes to self-image. So they don't want to go and get their relational self and their relational trauma healed. They're not going to go own their sense of self in the way of with a Patrick Tian, a good childhood trauma survivor, and they won't take ownership of their affect. And so they don't want to take ownership of affective realism and emotional charges and activate states. What they want are people who validate them. And together they go with their idea of what courage and strength are, and they continue to do themselves a disservice, not us, themselves. And the smart human beings who are committed to leadership, whether it be at home, out there in the world, in a job, whatever it may be, you're going to know the ventral pivot like I know it, because that's exactly why you're still here. Those of you who hear me, this is for you all who have been regularly tuning in, because our channel guidance, food for thought, and messages are back, whether it be with video or not. The being yourself, it's always the same, except for now I understand the ones who can do it are going to be committed to who they are for real, and they're not going to play it to a crowd. And when we see the ones who are still looking to be supportive of each other, we understand what getting out of hell means. It's been explained again. And when it comes to the ones who want to demonize and dehumanize, you just give it a rest is what I'd love to tell them in the face, but you can't. So let's commit to our lovely human potential. We'll have more playlists like this. I'm thinking of maybe like for the trend discernment series, and then we might have a deep dive into more of that, which is being a human who unlocks potential. Check out PayHip. There's that new guide I think I told you about at some point, but if I didn't, the accessible guide. You can thank my lovely life partner for that one, because otherwise I wasn't going to create it. And then you have the regulated leader, which involves a little bit more of the in-depth analyses of amazing frameworks from Dr. Danny Siegel and Stephen Porges' lens, the polyvagal one. Then you have your sovereign blueprint. That's a bit lighter load, but it's still with theory, effective realism, and I believe activation on some sort. I'm forgetting, but you will have executive summaries that you can read on PayHip. They're not out for the regular leader or your sovereign blueprint. They're only out for now for the accessible guide, and you have the 10-minute mindset practice if you want that one for the ventral pivot. And so check out Substack as well, and do subscribe YouTube, subscribe to TikTok, subscribe to lovely podcast. We still have our paid subscriber content, so if you do want to subscribe to that, there's some stuff in that lovely paid content playlist. And so in the meantime, thanks again for stopping by. Have a good one.